The ruins of Threshold 9 stretched like broken teeth across the horizon. Julia Marks documented the devastation for the galactic courts. 20 years of war between Quellens and Draxus had ended 3 weeks ago. The dead numbered in millions. Julia photographed everything. Mass graves, destroyed nurseries, the infrastructure of genocide. She found him in a collapsed Draxus hatchery, buried under rubble that had protected him from the orbital bombardment. A hatchling, maybe 6 months old, his scales already marked with the distinctive crimson patterns of the warrior caste. He was barely alive. Julia should have called the peacekeepers immediately, should have followed protocol. Instead, she cleared the rubble, administered first aid, and wrapped him in her thermal blanket. His eyes opened, vertical pupils focusing with unnatural clarity. Draxus possessed perfect memory, every moment recorded in crystalline detail, passed genetically to offspring. This hatchling had inherited memories of war, propaganda, hatred distilled across generations. His first words, translated by her earpiece, were names. 27 names. Kaelon officials marked for assassination when he matured. "Where did you learn those names?" Julia asked softly. "I remember. Enemies of my people. I will kill them when I am grown. It is my purpose." Julia's stomach turned. He was a child, programmed like a weapon. "What's your name?" "Talon. It means death from above, in our language." She should have turned him over right then. Quellens wanted all Draxus young executed as future threats. Draxus survivors would raise him as a soldier for the next war. The peacekeepers would lock him in a research facility. Julia took him to her quarters instead. The first month was chaos. Talon remembered everything. Every image in Julia's files, every atrocity photograph, every war crime she'd documented. His perfect memory turned her own work against her arguments for peace. "The Quellens burned hatcheries," he said, pointing at her screen with a tiny claw. "Here, and here, and here. 147 documented incidents. They deserve extinction. They do terrible things because your people did terrible things first," Julia countered. "It's a cycle. I remember 12 Kaelon attacks before the first Draxus retaliation. Your own archives prove you wrong. Talon, I remember every face in these files, every victim. When I am grown, I will make them remember too." His voice held no malice, just certainty. Perfect memory made forgiveness impossible. Julia realized she was losing. She couldn't out-argue someone who never forgot anything, who inherited generations of justified grievances. Facts without context were weapons, and Talon had been given an arsenal. She tried a different approach. "Do you remember your first day here?" "Yes. January 15th, 2387, 14:23 station time. You gave me thermal wrap, temperature 36.5 degrees. You sang while treating my wounds, Sakura Sakura, Japanese folk song, Kiev. You remember facts, Talon, data, but humans forget most things. And that's our strength." Julia pulled up her personal files. "This is my daughter, Yuki. She died in a Draxus raid 7 years ago." Talon's scales flickered with distress. "I am sorry. If you wish revenge." "No. Listen." Julia's voice was firm. "I remember she died. I remember the pain. But I'm forgetting the hurt. Not the love, but the sharp edges of grief. Human memory is imperfect. Smooths trauma, lets us heal. That's how we survive our own history. That sounds like weakness. Failure of biology. It's adaptation. Humans spent millennia at war. We committed atrocities you can't imagine. But we're still here because we learned to forget just enough to try again." She knelt to his eye level. "Your perfect memory is a prison. You'll never escape the past because you carry all of it. Always. My memory makes me strong. Superior. Does it? You're 6 months old and you already know exactly who you'll hate for the rest of your life. You've inherited grudges you didn't earn, wounds you never felt. Where's the choice in that?" Talon was silent for a long time. His claws clicked against the floor, a nervous tick Julia had learned to recognize. Draxus don't forget. It's what makes us us. Then maybe that's the problem. The months passed. Julia taught Talon human concepts. Forgiveness, second chances, the idea that people could change. He learned them academically but couldn't internalize them. His memory made every grievance fresh. The breaking point came at the ceasefire ceremony. Julia brought Talon, hidden beneath diplomatic credentials. Representatives from both species gathered to sign peace accords. The explosives were planted by extremists from both sides, united in their belief that peace was betrayal. The blast threw Julia across the pavilion. She heard screaming, smelled burning flesh, watched as delegates from both species scrambled for exits. Talon stood frozen amid the chaos, his perfect memory showing him every reason this moment was inevitable, every atrocity that justified the attack, every historical precedent for eternal war. Julia, bleeding from shrapnel wounds, grabbed his arm. Choose. Choose what? What you remember. What you carry forward. She coughed blood. You can remember every reason to hate, every justification for the next war. Or you can choose to remember this moment, when someone asked you to be better than your programming. I can't forget. It's not biologically possible. No, but you can choose what matters. That's not forgetting, that's wisdom. Talon looked at the chaos, at Kalon and Draxus bleeding together, at Julia who'd saved him despite what his species had taken from her. His perfect memory showed him the logical path. Violence begetting violence, forever. But Julia had taught him something else. That humans survive their own darkness not through perfect recall, but through imperfect grace. He made a choice no Draxus had made before. He helped the wounded, both species, pulling them from rubble with careful claws. He didn't forget the reasons for hatred, couldn't forget them. But he chose, deliberately, to act on different memories. Julia's kindness, her daughter's smile in photographs, the folk song she sang while treating his wounds. The peacekeepers found them hours later. Julia had survived, barely. Talon had saved 43 delegates from both species. You'll remember all of it, Julia said from her hospital bed. The attacks, the losses, the reasons for war. Yes, I'll remember everything. Talon's scales had shifted to blue, the color of mourning in his species. But I'll also remember you taught me that memory without choice is just chains, and that the bravest thing humans do is choose to try again, despite remembering why it might fail. The galaxy watched as Talon became the first Draxus to publicly advocate for peace. Not by forgetting his species' trauma, but by choosing actively, deliberately, to remember Julia's lessons alongside ancestral hatreds. It revolutionized how the galaxy viewed the war. Because if a species with perfect memory could choose forgiveness, then those who naturally forgot had no excuse for perpetual conflict. Julia's story spread. The human who taught a predator that humanity's greatest strength wasn't perfect recall or superior forgetting, but the courage to choose which memories to act upon. That wisdom wasn't remembering everything, but knowing what to carry forward and what to set down.